After owning the Nintendo Switch 2 for over a year now, was it actually worth the upgrade? I think first thing to look at is definitely the build quality of the device. To be honest, I think it's taken quite a big step up compared to the older model. The device is mostly made out of plastic, but it feels quite nice to hold. It's definitely not an unpleasant feeling plastic of holding. It is really nice to hold. The body of the device is mostly made of plastic, as I just mentioned, but the hinge is actually made of metal, and it has this nice, like, I don't know, it's like a type piston-y feeling where you can move it and position it anywhere you want, and it will just stay there. So it's super nice to use, and you can have any angle you want really within its tolerance. You can even have it nearly lying completely flat, which makes such a big difference to how you want to play it, especially in tabletop mode. But there are two major changes that Nintendo have made that I just love about this device. First one's definitely the Joy-Cons themselves, and just having them so much bigger compared to the older ones. Sadly, I don't have an older one to compare, but I used to have an older Nintendo Switch, and the difference in size is just massive. It's unbelievable. Like, it's finally comfortable to hold one Joy-Con in one hand. So really having them separate, either in tabletop mode or on the TV, really makes a big difference to holding the controllers. Of course, the new snap-on feature, instead of sliding it in, just makes it so much easier, and it's really enjoyable to use. To be honest, it's quite addictive to just take on and off all the time, especially when you use the grip. I always like to take it off and put it on all the time because the sound is just so nice. And the last major change that I really enjoy and really appreciate is the USB Type-C on the top as well as on the bottom. And this just gives you that flexibility of charging it whilst using it in your hand. The bottom port will be used for docking. So when you dock it to a TV, it will use the bottom port, but it leaves the top one free for anything else that you want. But especially when you use it in handheld mode, that's when I would always charge it from the top, as the bottom can get very annoying and very in the way sometimes. And especially if you have it in tabletop mode, charging it from the top is just perfect because you can't really charge it from the bottom anyway. Having that extra USB Type-C port just makes a massive difference for the device. The speakers are also nice and loud and pretty full. You're not going to expect like amazing audio quality from a device like this. The display is also a super nice display. It's quite bright and it's really nice to look at. The display is an LCD, but I'll get into the negatives a little bit later about this device. But overall, the screen itself is very nice and the games look so crisp. Also just gotten a lot bigger, and it's so nice to look at, especially in handheld or in tabletop mode, because in docked it's on the TV, of course. But the bigger screen definitely gives you more of an immersive feel, and it's super enjoyable to use this size screen. There are definitely some downsides, which we'll get into again. The screen and the overall size of it is just really nice to use, but also the new chip that it has inside for it to perform at a way higher level than the older Switches used to. Because now the Nintendo Switch 2 can output 60 FPS at 4K on the TV through the dock, and even in handheld, it can game up to 120 FPS, which is so cool. It feels so fluid, and you definitely notice it whilst playing games. The first thing I did when I got the Switch 2 was boot up an old game, which was Zelda Breath of the Wild, as that was my most favorite game of the Switch era by far. Having that experience enhanced again is just so nice and looked so crisp, especially with the 60 FPS, but also just the quality enhancements just made it so nice. So because of that, I just had to start a complete new save game for this and start from scratch, because re-experiencing Hyrule on this device was just a massive game changer. What has also been great about the Nintendo Switch 2 is just that it is backwards compatible with all your older Switch games. So all the backlog of Switch games that I've been having, as well as physical and digital, are just easily usable on the Switch 2 as if there was no problem at all. Speaking of backwards compatibility, I'm actually going to be doing a comparison between the Nintendo Switch 2 and the AYN Thor in about 2 weeks. So make sure you're subscribed for that video, as I'm going to be comparing the AYN Thor with the Nintendo Switch and seeing which console is really the best to take portably. A massive upgrade that I've appreciated a huge amount is just the internal storage. Going from 32 gigabytes on the older Switch to 256 is just a new world completely. You can add so many more games onto the device itself, just switch from game to game a lot easier than with the older Switch. I mean, with the older Switch, I could pretty much get about 5 games on there. It was that small, but now with the Switch 2, I'm definitely above 20 games now on it. There are some big games though. Like for example, Mario Kart came in at like 27 gigabytes. You definitely have to manage it. All in all, you could just fit way more games and way nicer quality games onto the device. And of course, what makes a Switch, which I really enjoy, is just the flexibility and usability of the device. So having it docked to your TV, or having it in handheld mode, just like this, or even in tabletop mode, and just having the choice to being able to game wherever you want and how you want is really nice to have. Of course, you had that in the Switch 1, but this device definitely has that uniqueness of being able to play it in so many different ways. It just has to have a shout out for that. So the Nintendo Switch 2 definitely has some amazing positives, but there are also some negatives that do cause a headache sometimes with this device. For example, the battery life. Especially when you play something like Donkey Kong Bonanza, the new and improved version of Zelda Breath of the Wild, or the new Portability, it's just very power hungry and battery life is pretty poor. I'm looking at around 2.5 to 3.5 hours playing those games, so this thing drains so quick, like unbelievably quick. And compared to the older Switch, where I could get around 5 hours normally, then this does feel like a downgrade battery-wise in that way. But I totally understand why it uses more battery, and it looks way better and it's way nicer and it's higher frame rate, of course. But that's a bit of an issue for a portable device where you either constantly have to look for a power outlet and see where you can charge, or you have to carry a power bank all the time just so that you can keep this thing topped up. It is a little frustrating in that way, and it feels quite limiting. So for a new and improved version of this, it would be amazing to just either have a bigger battery or use an OLED display, because this display is actually an LCD display. Even though this LCD display, I have no problems with this at all, I do miss the OLED on the Switch OLED, which was such a good crisp display, and the saturation was so nice on that display. And comparing it to this, of course the quality is really good of the games that you have on this device, but the Switch OLED just gave you that bit more of a punch with the display and that saturation, and made it super pleasant to look at those games. It made a massive difference. So for the next Switch, it would be great to just have a better battery and also just the OLED display. Those two things would make this a killer device. Of course, with the display being a bit bigger than the normal Switch, it's also pretty big. I mean, this is a massive device now. It is quite thin. It is still as thin as the normal Switch ones were. You can't just fit this in a pocket and you have to throw it in a backpack. But this is the case that I use with the Nintendo Switch 2. And just having this in the case, of course the case isn't too bulky or anything, but it's still massive. Like, it's so big. So when I went out on trips, it's always been a question of, do I sacrifice quite a lot of space in my bag just so I can take the Switch and play it for 3 hours? I don't know, it's always been difficult, and I've always had to try and make that decision between, do I take it, yes or no, and because of the battery and because of how big it is it actually worth taking? Which is a bit sad for a product that is meant to be taken. And of course, the prices of the Switch itself, but also the games that you buy on it, has gotten considerably higher. The current market is of course not helping at the moment, especially with the memory shortage and everything, but it still doesn't mean that this isn't an expensive device. It's still around 450 euros just for the Switch 2 alone without any games. So it's still an expensive device. And the games these days now come in at around 70 euro. So the prices have definitely gone up. And even Nintendo said that in September, they're going to increase the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 because of all the memory shortage that's going on. So if you really wanted to pick up a Nintendo Switch 2, I would definitely look into it before September begins, because they have mentioned that they are going to increase the price. So if you've been on the fence of a Nintendo Switch, make sure to get one before the price increases, because you never want to pay more for something if you can get it at a cheaper price. Another, like, it's not really a negative, but it's also not really a positive, but the amount of games on here is a bit tricky. Like, it's not necessarily the amount of games that is the issue, but it's just games that I'm personally interested in is just not really there on the Switch 2 as much. I only got 3 new generation of games: Mario Kart, Portability, and also Donkey Kong Bonanza. And I haven't even finished Donkey Kong Bonanza, and it's really tough to get back into it mentally, so it's a bit tricky to get back into that. And Portability, I also really loved Portability, but it just felt so overwhelming with how much stuff there is that it just made it really difficult to pick back up after a month of not playing it, and that's been really tough for me. But the games I've enjoyed the most are actually the older games, so Breath of the Wild as well as Tears of the Kingdom, and just having them enhanced for an even better experience than on the first Switch. So I think that's it for me for the Nintendo Switch Switch 2. All in all, it's a great device, but there are definitely some downsides to it. I just use it as a home console really, mostly because of the poor battery life, and I have an OLED TV, so that really helps with the quality. But all in all, it's a good device. I do like playing games on here, but maybe there is a better option out there. If you've enjoyed the video, then please go down, give it a like, maybe even a comment as well if you own a Nintendo Switch and what your experience has been on this device, as well as subscribing, as I'm going to be doing the comparison video between the AYN Thor and the Nintendo Switch later, as well as the full month review of the AYN Thor. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.